Barron Trump had stayed out of the spotlight for years, until Representative Jasmine Crockett mentioned his name on live television, forcing a truth into public view that even his own family hadn't anticipated. They were just 12 minutes into the segment when it happened. The studio lights were harsh, the energy tense but routine. Another political roundtable on Capitol View, the kind of Sunday show people watched half distracted over coffee or laundry. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, dressed in a navy suit, sat poised between two well-known pundits. Across from her was Victor Levinson, a former lobbyist turned political analyst with a habit of cutting people off mid-sentence. The topic was ethics, specifically the quiet investigations unfolding behind the scenes, campaign finance issues, conflicts of interest, hush money transfers. Nothing new, until Jasmine leaned forward, met the host's eyes, and said it. "I just find it strange," she began evenly, "that no one wants to discuss what happened with the trust realignment in January 2021, particularly the one that involved Barron Trump's name. That wasn't a clerical mistake. That was intentional." The table went silent. The host, veteran anchor Deira Collins, blinked hard and cleared her throat, trying to regain control. Victor smirked, thinking Jasmine had misspoken, but she didn't waver. She sat calm, as if waiting to say it for months. "Congresswoman," Deira finally said, "just to clarify, are you suggesting Barron Trump was part of a financial transfer at the end of the Trump presidency?" "I'm saying there's documentation with his name on it," Jasmine replied, "and we should stop pretending it doesn't exist." The control room cut to commercial faster than anyone could react, but the moment had already escaped. Within minutes, clips were everywhere. The full quote, Deira's pause, Victor's smirk, all over X, Instagram, TikTok. Hashtags exploded before the show even returned from break. In the control room, a young producer whispered, "This one's gonna blow up." And it did. There hadn't been a live TV moment this unpredictable since Katie Couric caught a senator lying about troop numbers in 2011. But this was different. It involved the former president's son, someone who had almost never spoken publicly. Phones buzzed nonstop. Journalists messaged each other in all caps. On another network, a political commentator pulled out her earpiece mid-broadcast to ask if the claim was verified. No one could confirm it, but the effect was already irreversible. Back on set, Jasmine didn't retract her statement. She doubled down. "I'm not attacking a child," she said. "I'm exposing how power protects itself. If Barron Trump's name was used in that realignment, then let's discuss it. Let's stop acting like certain people are beyond questioning." Victor shook his head. "You're politicizing a kid," he argued. "I'm politicizing documents," Jasmine replied sharply. "If someone's name appears in a trust to shield assets from scrutiny, that's not off limits. That's a red flag." The host ended the discussion early. No applause, no laughter. It wasn't that kind of segment. Backstage, a junior intern whispered to another staffer, phone in hand. "Barron's name is trending everywhere." What none of them realized yet was how close that 40-second exchange came to reaching the one person who wanted nothing to do with it. The clip was under a minute long, but it didn't matter. The fallout was instant, triggered by 12 deliberate words. Let's stop pretending some people are too sacred to question. To understand why those words hit so hard, especially for the Trump family, we have to rewind. Just a week before the broadcast, Jasmine Crockett had received a confidential file. It came from a staffer on the House Oversight Committee. No cover note. No explanation. Just a scanned document dated January 12, 2021. It detailed adjustments to a blind trust made in the final days of the Trump presidency. But one entry stood out, a custodial structure listing the name Barron William Trump Crockett. For a former civil rights attorney who had reviewed hundreds of financial disclosures, this one was far from ordinary. Barron's inclusion wasn't just unusual, it was deliberate. The kind of move one makes when quietly transferring assets, counting on the public's belief that the youngest Trump was always off limits. Jasmine Crockett held on to the document for several days, uncertain what to do. She showed it to her chief of staff, Patrice Lattimore, a pragmatic, no-nonsense aide. "If you bring that up on air," Patrice cautioned, "they'll call you heartless. They'll say you're dragging a kid into politics." Jasmine folded her hands, thoughtful. "He's 20 now. They used his name. That's not a child. That's a shield." So she took the file with her to the studio, half expecting she'd stay quiet. But the moment Victor Levinson started talking about unfounded witch hunts against conservatives, something inside her snapped. Jasmine had seen it too many times. People in power using victimhood as protection. She'd had enough. She wasn't careless, and she didn't accuse Barron of any crime. She simply stated the fact, live on air, and watched the silence settle across the room. In the days that followed, every news outlet analyzed her exact wording, frame by frame. She never said he committed fraud, one anchor noted. But she clearly implied involvement, another replied. Legal experts soon joined the conversation. A former IRS investigator told a podcast that using a family member's name to shield last-minute asset transfers isn't illegal, but it can be a deliberate way to delay scrutiny or limit transparency. The reaction was swift and polarized. Supporters of Crockett praised her for confronting entrenched power. Critics accused her of crossing a moral line. Barron's done nothing wrong, read one viral tweet. He's a young man trying to live privately. Why drag him into this? But beneath the public noise, a quieter discussion began in Washington. Lawmakers and aides whispered theories. Who gave Crockett the document? Was there more behind it? Could it have come from someone inside the Trump circle trying to burn a bridge? Then a detail emerged that almost everyone had overlooked. An archived press release from February 2021. It came from a Delaware-based financial firm confirming a trust, restructuring dated just 3 days after. Barron's name appeared on that file. No individuals were listed, but the timing matched. Someone had moved money quickly and quietly. The pieces were forming a pattern, even if the full picture remained incomplete. At the center of it was Jasmine's original question. If a person's name is used to protect wealth, can we really say they're uninvolved? Barron hadn't seen the broadcast live, but when he did, it hit him personally. He was sitting at a cafe in Sarasota when his phone began to buzz nonstop. The late afternoon sun filtered through the palm trees as he sat across from his childhood friend, Drew Mallory, sipping an iced coffee and flipping through a college course catalog. He wasn't enrolled yet, but he was thinking about it. Philosophy, maybe computer science, or both. He had stayed out of the public eye for years. No social media, no interviews, no podcasts, just silence. That's how he wanted it. Politics had already taken enough from his family. He'd seen the rallies, the protests, the endless headlines about his father. None of it had ever felt real to him. Not the cheers, not the criticism, just noise in the distance. But today, that noise came for him. The first text was from a cousin in Nevada. You okay? Turn on the news. Then came a missed call from his mother, 2 more from an unknown number. Then another text. Bro, what did Crockett just say about you? Barron frowned. What's going on? Drew looked up from his phone. Man, you might want to see this. He turned the screen toward him, a clip from Capitol View, showing Jasmine Crockett leaning forward, calm and deliberate, saying his full name as if it were just another detail in the discussion. Barron froze, his breath caught halfway, hand tightening around his cup. He replayed the clip again and again, searching for meaning. Why would she say that? He finally asked. Drew didn't answer. Barron looked down at the scratched cafe table, a dull hum filling his head. Not anger exactly, not fear, just the strange weight of being seen without speaking. He stood suddenly. Let's get out of here. They walked out, passing a group of teenagers laughing outside. Barron pulled up his hoodie and walked fast, not because anyone was watching, but because he couldn't stand still. By the time they reached the condo, Melania was already pacing. She hadn't called again. She didn't need to. She just stared at him as he walked through the door. I told your father to stop using your name for those things, she said. No greeting. No hug. Just that. Barron dropped his bag. So it's true? Melania hesitated. I don't know. Probably. He did many things without telling me. Silence filled the space between them. Did I sign something? Barron asked. No. Then how does my name end up in a trust document? Melania looked away. Because that's how they operate. They use names like yours. Young, quiet, uninvolved, clean. Barron sank into a chair. That's not clean. That's wrong. She didn't disagree, and somehow that unsettled him even more. Later that night, his phone rang. It was his father. He didn't answer. He just stared at the screen until it went dark again. He wasn't furious. Not yet. But something inside him had shifted. A quiet sense of betrayal that didn't need shouting to be felt. The next morning, there were cameras outside the gate. Not a swarm, but enough to remind him what it felt like to be dragged back into the spotlight. A reporter called out, "Barron, is Crockett lying? Were you part of the trust?" He ignored the questions and walked back inside without a word. But behind the closed doors of Palm Beach, his name was being discussed in a very different tone. Inside the Trump residence at Mar-a-Lago, the mood was tense. The air itself seemed tight. Donald Trump stood in the formal sitting room, pacing in slow, deliberate steps, the kind that meant he was holding back frustration. A muted segment from Fox Business played on the television. The headline at the bottom of the screen read, "Crockett names Barron Trump in trust allegation, possible White House link." Donald turned toward his longtime attorney, Seth Delaney, a gray-haired man whose posture carried years of cleaning up difficult situations. "She wasn't supposed to go there," Donald said. "You hear me? They've got rules. You don't go after family. You don't touch him." Seth nodded quietly, his expression steady. He knew better than to point out that media rules had changed long ago. Melania sat off to the side, arms folded, legs tucked beneath her like she was trying not to move. She hadn't said much since the night before. She didn't have to say much. Ivanka's voice came through the speakerphone from Miami, sharp, controlled, and impatient. "Dad, this is going to spiral. I just got off a call with Ronan. The networks are already asking for archived documents." Donald exhaled, frustrated. "Let them dig. There's nothing illegal." "Maybe not illegal," Ivanka replied, "but there's something, and that's all they need. This isn't 2016 anymore. You can't just wait it out." Melania finally spoke, her tone quiet but cutting. "He didn't know, Donald." Trump stopped pacing. "Who didn't?" "Barron," Donald blinked. "What do you mean?" "Of course he didn't know. That's the point." Melania's voice lowered. "He's not a child anymore. He understands what's happening, and he's angry." For a brief second, something flickered across Trump's face. Maybe regret, but it faded quickly. He turned to his lawyer. "Find out who gave Crockett that file. Someone leaked it. I want a name and a face." Seth nodded calmly. "We'll look into it. But you might also consider whether it's time to make a public statement." Trump scoffed. "Absolutely not. You respond, you validate it. That's what she wants, attention. I'm not giving it to her." Across the property, Barron sat alone in his room, staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed again, a message from a number he hadn't seen since boarding school in Maryland. "Didn't think I'd see you trending. You okay?" He didn't reply, just swiped the text away. A soft knock followed. His father stepped in, slower than usual. "Mind if I sit?" Barron shrugged. "Sure." Donald sat at the edge of the desk chair, spinning it slightly the way he used to when Barron was younger. Now his son was taller, quieter, harder to read. "I didn't think it would blow up like this," Trump said, staring ahead. Barron kept his gaze on the ceiling. "Then why use my name? You weren't involved in anything." "It was paperwork. A name helps, makes things stick, look legitimate." "You mean I make it look clean?" Trump hesitated. It was clean. He didn't argue further. The silence between them said enough. "I didn't want this," Barron finally said. "I've spent my whole life trying to stay out of this mess." Donald nodded slowly. "Sometimes you don't get to choose what gets attached to your name." "I didn't attach anything," Barron said, meeting his father's eyes. "You did." That hit harder than Trump expected. While the family worked behind closed doors to control the fallout, the outside world was already dissecting every frame. By Monday, Barron Trump had been mentioned on every major news outlet, not as a passing reference, but as a headline. He was front and center in articles, podcast intros, TikTok breakdowns, and political blogs marked up with red arrows and circled screenshots. CNN ran a split screen, Jasmine Crockett's on-air moment beside a still photo of Barron walking through an airport. MSNBC debated whether her comment was justified or irresponsible. Fox called it a targeted smear against an innocent young man. It didn't matter that the full facts weren't known yet. The internet wasn't waiting. It rarely does. Clips of Crockett's statement surpassed 20 million views within 24 hours. Someone turned it into a dramatic montage with piano music. Another turned it into a meme. Jasmine at the table. Barron's face photoshopped behind her in an explosion. Nuance vanished. Hashtags like Depark Barron Trust, I'm Crockett Files, and Are Too Sacred to Question exploded across platforms. Even near poor Barron started trending, mostly from users defending him, but the speculation didn't stop. Reddit post claiming inside info from a supposed former White House staffer hit 15,000 comments, featuring blurry screenshots of financial records, most clearly fake. But truth didn't matter. Audiences had already decided. Some believed Barron was unknowingly caught in his father's web. Others insisted it was a coordinated smear campaign ahead of the next election. Then came the live streams, YouTubers and political commentators, running hours-long panels with titles like The Secret Trump Trust, What We Know, and Barron Speaks. One host in Portland claimed to have leaked Deutsche Bank emails without showing a single document, and still drew over 200,000 viewers, even reporters, who had ignored Barron for years were now digging through public records, searching for signatures, property listings, or anything that tied him to the story. Privacy, once automatic for the youngest Trump, vanished in under 48 hours. Meanwhile, in Miami, Jasmine Crockett's team was overwhelmed. They hadn't expected this level of chaos. Hate messages filled their inboxes. But so did gratitude. Dozens of voters from across the country sent notes thanking her for saying what others wouldn't. One message stood out, from a retired teacher in Oregon. For the first time, someone said what we've all been thinking. No name should be untouchable if it's protecting corruption. Crockett's press secretary urged her to release a clarifying statement, something that could ease the backlash and redirect attention. But Jasmine refused to retreat. I didn't accuse anyone, she told her team. I revealed a detail. If it wasn't true, they'd have sued already. And she wasn't wrong. Despite the chaos online, the Trump legal team hadn't issued a single cease and desist or threatened litigation. Nothing. Just silence. And to many, that silence spoke louder than any denial. But the internet wasn't just talking anymore. It was digging. A well-known political blogger from Phoenix, someone who had broken 2 major campaign finance stories in the past year, posted a cryptic thread that night. He hinted he had uncovered something in Delaware's public records. He didn't specify what, only shared a few clues: a timestamp, a trust registration number, and a file code matching the one Crockett had referenced. Suddenly, people weren't just reacting. They were investigating. But the next move didn't come from Crockett, the media, or even Trump. It came from someone no one expected: Barron himself. Miles from the chaos in D.C., in a small apartment above a liquor store in Phoenix, a man named Curtis Rose sat bent over 2 computer screens. His apartment was cluttered: open legal pads, takeout boxes, and a slow-turning ceiling fan overhead. Curtis wasn't a traditional journalist. No degree, no newsroom, but his track record spoke for itself. 2 years earlier, he had uncovered a secret PAC funneling foreign funds into a midterm campaign. The story was buried under bigger headlines, but those who followed the money remembered his name. He hadn't planned on investigating the Trump family again. But when Jasmine Crockett mentioned Barron on live TV, something clicked. Curtis recalled seeing that name months earlier in a public trust record from Delaware, a small digital entry he'd ignored at the time. Back then, it meant nothing. Now, it might mean everything. He reopened the state's online portal and typed, Trump Trust 2021. Nothing. He tried again. W. Trump. Still nothing. Then he remembered something an accountant once told him over a beer. When people hide assets, they don't use obvious names. They use initials, shell companies, or third-party custodians. So Curtis broadened his search. Every trust registered in Delaware between January 6th and January 15th, 2021. 57 results. He scrolled slowly, cross-checking addresses and LLC managers. Then he found it. BW Legacy Holdings, filed January 12th, 2021. The record listed, custodial designation, minor, adult beneficiary. Mailing address, a P.O. box linked to an accounting firm in Palm Beach, and at the bottom, a faint signature. Curtis recognized from a White House visitor log, Emma Yanovich, Trump's longtime tax attorney. Curtis leaned back in his chair. He didn't jump to conclusions. He downloaded the files, checked connected entities, and dug through linked LLCs. The deeper he went, the clearer it became. This wasn't an isolated registration. It was part of a larger financial network involving shell firms in Wyoming and South Dakota. The full name Barron William Trump never appeared, but his initials, BWT, did, under a section labeled Deferred Beneficiary Designations. Curtis knew what that meant. It didn't prove Barron managed anything, but it did suggest someone had planned for him to benefit from it someday. That made Crockett's statement more than speculation. Now came the hardest part, going public. He could post the files, but trolls would attack, and critics would frame it as a political smear. Still, he couldn't sit on it forever. He paced the room, heartbeat fast, before finally deciding. He uploaded one document, just one, with a simple caption. Why was a trust listing BWT as a beneficiary created 3 days before the Trump presidency ended, and why has no one asked? The post exploded. Online investigators started connecting the dots. BWT, January 12th, Palm Beach, Trump's tax lawyer. It was enough to reignite the whole conversation. Within 20 minutes, Curtis received a DM from a freelance journalist in Jacksonville. Are you sure that's who you think it is? He replied, yes, but I'm not the one who needs to explain it. They are. Back in Sarasota, Barron saw the tweet while scrolling in bed. He read it 3 times. No denials from his family. No statements from lawyers. Just silence. He stared at the screen. For once, the questions weren't about him. They were around him. And the pressure to respond was mounting fast. But instead of staying quiet, Barron made a decision that would change everything. He hadn't posted publicly in years. Not since an old, forgotten SoundCloud account from high school, where he uploaded music without his voice or photo. He'd always preferred staying in the background. That had been the unspoken rule. Stay quiet, stay invisible, and people would forget he existed. But this time, it was different. His name was everywhere, dissected by analysts, turned into memes, and shouted across every platform. The trust, the initials, the signatures. Even his middle name had become ammunition. Barron wasn't built for this. Not like his father, not like Ivanka, who had trained herself to thrive in it. He wasn't a strategist. He was just someone who had spent years trying to stay far from a world he never chose. Late Tuesday night, in a group chat with a few close friends, he finally said it. I think I want to say something. One friend replied immediately. Like, publicly? Another warned, don't. That'll just make it worse. But silence felt worse. It felt like drowning. He opened his notes app and started typing, deleted it, tried again. Nothing sounded right. Every version seemed offensive or stiff. Still, the pressure wouldn't go away. The longer he stayed quiet, the more people filled the silence for him. So instead of a statement, he reached out to someone who'd always seen him as a person, not a name. Leah Quinton. She'd sat beside him for 2 semesters at Columbia Prep. Now, she ran a small but respected independent YouTube channel, focusing on mental health and social commentary. He texted her late that night. Not sure you'll want to touch this, but I'd rather talk to someone real than be chewed up by CNN. She replied within minutes. Are you sure? Yeah. By the next afternoon, Leah was in Sarasota. No studio, no cameras, no production crew. Just 2 chairs in a quiet room, blinds half drawn, a handheld recorder between them. Barron didn't want to show his face. He just wanted people to hear his voice. The recording lasted under 15 minutes. Most of it was quiet and careful. Barron never denied the trust existed, but he also didn't claim to understand it fully. I never signed anything, he said. I didn't even know about it until last week. If someone wants to leave me something when I'm 30, fine, but don't use my name like I agreed to it. I didn't. When Leah asked how it felt watching everything unfold, his voice faltered slightly. It's strange seeing people talk about you like you're either a victim or a villain. I'm neither. I'm just trying to live a normal life. Leah didn't press further. She didn't have to. His pauses spoke volumes. He ended the conversation quietly. I think people need to stop assuming silence means agreement. Sometimes we're just tired of being spoken for. That night, Leah posted a short audio clip. No video, no edits. The internet erupted. Some dismissed it as a PR stunt. Others called it the most honest thing any member of the Trump family had ever done. Within hours, "Let Barron speak" was trending. But the shift wasn't about what he said. It was how he said it. Honest, candid, human. The political world didn't know how to react. While Barron's words drew empathy, Jasmine Crockett faced a different kind of storm. Standing by the tinted window in her DC office, she watched clouds roll over Capitol Hill. Her phone buzzed again, the 6th time in 5 minutes, but she didn't move. She already knew what the messages were about. Since Barron's interview went viral, the conversation had shifted. Not against her, but not in her favor either. The media was now focused less on the trust itself, and more on whether she had crossed a line by naming him on live TV. The headlines read, "Crockett's comment sparks sympathy for Trump's son. Was it a step too far? Barron speaks. Nation listens. Should Crockett respond?" Inside her office, her staff was tense. Calls kept coming in. Emails flooded by the hour, half supportive, half furious. Her chief of staff, Patrice Lattimore, paced behind her, holding a tablet of talking points. "You don't have to apologize," Patrice said quietly. "But you do have to say something. You're letting everyone else control the story." Jasmine didn't respond right away. She wasn't guilty, just exhausted. She finally turned from the window. "They're shifting the focus, making it about tone, not truth." Patrice nodded. "Tone gets people listening. Truth keeps them arguing." Jasmine rubbed her temples. "Do you think I went too far?" Patrice hesitated. "I think you went further than people were ready for that night." That evening, Jasmine recorded a short message from her kitchen. No podium, no flag, no speechwriters. "To those who felt I crossed a line, I hear you. I understand the reaction, but I believe we can discuss power and accountability without pretending certain names are untouchable. My job isn't to protect feelings. It's to protect fairness." She paused, then added, "If a name was used, it should be questioned, even if that name belongs to someone who didn't ask to be involved. That's not an attack. That's accountability." The clip went viral within an hour. Opinions split immediately. Some praised her for standing firm. Others said she'd missed a chance to show compassion. But one thing was certain. Jasmine Crockett wasn't backing down. Later that night, her office received a plain manila envelope with no return address. Inside, 3 printed pages listing trust transactions and one peculiar note. Custodial override filed under adult minor clause. Patrice frowned. "You think it's bait?" Jasmine shook her head. "No, it's a door, and someone's daring me to walk through it." She slipped the papers into her briefcase and locked it. That night, she rewatched Barron's interview. The moment he said, "I didn't sign up for any of this," for the first time, she didn't see a last name, she saw a kid caught in decisions made by adults in boardrooms he'd never entered. It complicated everything, but the person most affected wasn't Jasmine, it was Barron himself. He sat by the pool behind his Sarasota condo, knees drawn up, earbuds in, no music playing. The moonlight rippled across the water, scattered and uneven. His mother sat nearby, wrapped in a light shawl, her tea untouched. After a long silence, Melania finally spoke. "I watched the interview." He looked over. "Yeah? You sounded like yourself." Barron gave a small smile. "That's good. I wasn't trying to sound like anyone else." She hesitated. "Do you want to know what your father said about it?" He shrugged. "Not really." She continued anyway. "He said you were careful. You didn't give them anything to twist." He was relieved. Barron nodded, eyes on the water. "I think he was also a little scared." Melania tilted her head. "Scared of what?" "Of me saying more." She smiled faintly. "No, of you saying just enough." The line stayed with him. On TV, CNN was debating whether children of public figures should be held responsible for financial decisions made in their name. Barron stood up and turned it off. Later that night, his father arrived unannounced. Melania let him in without a word. He walked in slowly, navy blazer, no tie, face drawn with fatigue. "Can we talk?" he asked. Barron nodded, sitting on the couch. Trump didn't sit, just stood with his hands in his pockets. "I know this isn't how you wanted to be seen," he said quietly. "I didn't want this for you either." Barron looked up. "Then why use my name?" No anger, just exhaustion. Trump looked away. "Because I thought it was harmless. I didn't think it would matter. It was meant to protect you." Barron met his eyes. "Not for me. Trump paused, like the words carried more weight than he expected.